Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Susan McGuire, and I am Director of Professional Development at ACCE, and I'm really happy to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar. Today's webinar will be facilitated by Allison Walden of the Tulsa Regional Chamber, who will present on monetizing virtual events. Before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping matters. First, as usual, attendees are in listen-only mode during the webinar to avoid background noise. Second, after the presentation, we'll have time for questions, and you can ask those questions by using the question function of the webinar. The question box is on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question, and I will read the question to Allison. If we run out of time and don't get to your question, either I or Allison will contact you. And you're also welcome to contact her directly after the webinar if you'd prefer. Her contact information will be on the last presentation slide. And third, the presentation slides and a couple of handouts are uploaded to the webinar panel. Just find the box called Handouts and download. We will post those documents in our recording if you would prefer not to download them during the presentation. And then finally, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be up on the ACCE website on our webinar page no later than Thursday, May 14th. So with that, I will go ahead and introduce Allison. Allison Walden serves the Tulsa Regional Chamber as Senior Vice President of Resource Development. She manages a team of 12 to generate 2/3 of the Chamber's annual revenue through memberships, sponsorships, and public-private multi-year funding initiatives. During her tenure, Allison has overseen Chamber campaigns, gathering more than $60 million. She's a certified fundraising executive and a past president of the Eastern Oklahoma chapter of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. Allison also serves on the Southeast Board of Regents for the Institute for Organization Management and achieved the IOM designation in June 2016. So thank you so much, Allison, for presenting today, and I will hand things over to you now.
Thank you so much, Susan. It is a pleasure to be with each and every one of you today. My hope is to be useful as you consider how to pivot and redirect your resources, time, and energy into providing meaningful experiences to your members and non-members alike in the virtual space. A disclaimer before I get started, while I have the privilege of speaking to you today, the items that I'm going to share with you are the result of an incredible collaboration between many members of the Tulsa Regional Chamber team, to include the efforts of our communications, marketing, and technical teams, our membership and sales teams, our programming and content group, as well as our CEO who has served as the MC for many of our virtual offerings. So a thank you so much to each and every member of the Tulsa Chamber team who has been instrumental in creating and collaborating on these ideas and concepts. So regardless of whether or not you wear all the hats that I just mentioned, or you have a team to rely upon, our hope is that this information today will be useful and scalable to you in your own chamber. So just real quickly, a little bit about us. We at the Tulsa Regional Chamber serve more than 2,200 members in northeastern Oklahoma with a staff of 52. My guess is that would be one of the questions you would ask, so I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. We are a previous Chamber of the Year recipient, and just yesterday we're named a finalist for this year's Chamber of the Year award. So we're very much looking forward to continuing that process in the coming months. So thank you so much to ACCE. We are also a 5-star accredited chamber from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and we also share or have accreditations for our economic development team, our tourism division, as well as accredited sports commissions and a film office as well. So very quickly, I wanted to share with you our strategic dashboard. This is what the Chamber's strategic plan looked like in January of 2020. As you can see, I mentioned several of our key work areas for economic development and tourism. Of course, we have a strong government affairs arm, and community development, which I haven't yet mentioned, includes our Tulsa's Young Professionals and our Mosaic Diversity Council. And then, of course, you can see below those strategic initiatives, all of the support initiatives that make those strategic areas of focus possible, including resource development, which is my area of focus. The reason I share this with you today is because this is not what our strategic dashboard looks like now. We took the time in March to reimagine and repurpose the Chamber's focus to be most useful to our members and our community. We realized very quickly in the midst of this new situation that some of our previous priorities were no longer relevant and needed to be set aside to assure that we were filling the gaps and providing the support that our members and communities needed. So as you can see, the green bar across the top, those are the things that we believe still are the Chamber's core competencies or key areas that we can uniquely contribute to the community. And as you can see, we were able to pivot some of our key work underneath those pillars, but not everything that we were focusing on in January is an immediate focus of ours now. As you can see under the Convene and Connect pillar, you'll see highlighting virtual events and other specific events that we hold at the Chamber. Before this time period in which I'm going to talk to you about today, the Chamber truly had not explored virtual events nor executed them. We know that many chambers across the country very regularly do webinars and things of that nature. We had not explored that. And so this was truly an innovative opportunity for us to stand in the gap and serve our members in a new way. So if your chamber hasn't taken a look at your current strategic plan and pivoted it toward what the new normal looks like and how you can be most useful, I would encourage you to do that exercise, because my guess is there's some opportunities that you could be taking advantage of. So to that point, we took this new strategic plan and identified the opportunities to be kind and useful to our community. We knew that one of the key things the Chamber does better than anyone is convene people. And we knew that we had expertise among our members and within our own staff that could provide free resources and support to members in our community. Most importantly, amid all of the uncertainty, we wanted to make sure that we could provide businesses with an advantage, because that's why they come to the Chamber in the first place. They want to gain an advantage above and beyond the competition and help our region gain an advantage for economic growth. So what did that look like for us? We very quickly, around mid-March, decided that there was an opportunity for the Chamber to create a Tulsa Regional Chamber Business Support Series. As you can see, we have some presenting sponsors of that, which I'm going to dig into very briefly. But this was our offering to the community, our first kind of foray into the virtual space to be useful to our members right now. So a little bit more about the Business Support Series. We hold this virtual webinar through Zoom with interaction with video and audio components every Tuesday and Thursday from 11 to 11:30. It features relevant topics, always featuring 2 experts if we can. That's because we want to make sure that the programming is as broad and diverse as possible in order to maximize the experience for our members. Most of the time, the experts are members of the Chamber, but not always. They're hosted by our Chamber CEO, as well as a co-host that also serves as one of our webinar sponsors. And the offering is fully scripted with time for Q&A, and the recordings are posted after the fact on tulsachamber.com, much like this offering today. So I know everyone's curious about the revenue results, and so I'll get right to that. This business support series between the months of April and May have been able to generate almost $15,000 in sponsorship sales for the Chamber. The first 4 weeks that we offered this sponsorship, it sold out in less than 48 hours. And the second 4 weeks of our series sold out less than 10 days later. And so what we have is we have $15,000 in the bank to support the Chamber's mission, and active and relevant programming for the Business Support Series between now and June 4th because of this offering. The reasons why we truly believe we were successful in generating this revenue is for 2 reasons. We had a solid methodology and we had a solid case for sponsorship. So I'm going to dig into both of those things to give you some key nuggets as you think about your own virtual events. So first, the case for sponsorship. I know there's a lot of information on this slide, but I wanted to get really granular for you all because those are the questions we get most often. Okay, what are you charging? What are your benefits? What's your frequency? All of those things. So here it is laid out for you. We have 4 presenting sponsors available at $1,850. We only have 4 available, and they're only available for a 4-week time period. I know I mentioned, phase 1 and phase 2, or series 1 and series 2. The first 4-week sponsorship was available to these 4 presenting sponsors for 4 weeks, from mid-April to mid-May. And so that encompassed a sponsorship opportunity for visibility during 8 episodes. Our exposure is an average of 150 attendees per episode at the time of the sale of the sponsorship. And some of the key benefits we're really proud of are, of course, top billing and advanced publicity and logo recognition on the web pages that feature the business support series, but we also allow our sponsor to truly engage in this offering. We allow them to welcome attendees alongside our CEO and introduce speakers, and they're able to do that for 1 week during their 4-week sponsorship. So while their business gets visibility for 4 weeks, they truly get to engage and interact on 2 episodes during 1 week of their sponsorship. They also get the last word. So we allow our sponsor 30 seconds toward the end of the webinar to ask a speaker one final question that we know in advance, to make sure that the sponsor gets visibility on the front end as well as the back end. And then, of course, they get logo recognition at the website, where the content will live on and continue to be a resource for members and non-members alike. And one thing to consider as a disclaimer, of course, just like in live events, you can't guarantee a number of attendees or impressions, and I would say in the Zoom environment, it's no different. Make sure that your sponsors understand and manage those expectations, that you're going to continue to try and push and market these offerings as much as possible, but of course you can't guarantee the number of attendees. So I've mentioned the case for sponsorship. We felt like that was very strong. I also want to go a little bit more to the macro level and talk about the methodology that we recommend that you can leverage as you're thinking about your own virtual offerings, whether it's a networking opportunity, a webinar, or some other offering. So the first thing I would say is that you truly need to lead with content first. One thing that you might be surprised to find is that our webinar series began on March 13th. Our first sponsor didn't launch until April 13th. So we truly have had 3 months of content, but only about 2 months worth of sponsored material. And that's because we really wanted to make sure that we had something that was valuable and replicatable and quality to sell before we got kind of out in front of our skis. So think about your mission, think back to your strategic plan, think about how you want to be most useful to your members and community. Let your quality content drive your offerings. Focus on that first, and I guarantee you that there will be benefit to a sponsor that can come second. The second thing I would say is that you need to develop a consistent process. You need to make sure that if you're going to sell a sponsorship, that you can deliver on that promise. So very early on in the methodology of the business support series, there was a lot of structure and process that was put in place. We had to develop a programming team. What are we going to talk about? We had to develop a technical team and create a promotional calendar to market these events. We had to create scripts and think about thoughtful questions for our speakers. And we needed to engage our sponsors and our speakers in practice sessions. Not all this technology was, top of mind or, easy to use for all of our speakers. We needed to take that into account. And then we also got a little bit of pushback on the regular time and date that we executed for these webinars. What if a member can't attend on a Tuesday or Thursday at 11 o'clock? What if someone's going to miss out? We truly believed that developing a consistent date and time to these events was going to work in our favor, and we believe that that actually was the case. And of course, all of these offerings are available at our website, so they live on and they're continuing to be accessed by our members and non-members alike. The third thing I would say, after you develop a consistent process, is truly develop an attractive product. Okay, you've got something great to sell. How do I market it? How do I package it? So the 4 things you really need to think about are cost, frequency, benefits, and urgency. We really wanted to make this an affordable cost. As you can see, we sold 4 sponsorships for $1,850. Well, they sold out in less than 48 hours. So my guess is we probably priced it a little bit too inexpensive. Maybe it was a little too affordable, but we know we wanted cash in the door to support our mission, and we wanted to be accessible. So overall, we believe it was a win-win. The frequency of the offering was really, really important as well. We were offering these webinars 2 times a week, so sponsors were getting an incredible amount of visibility on a weekly and then on a monthly basis. So we felt like that frequency was really important. We also took a lot of time to develop very meaningful benefits. We provided that engagement to the sponsor that I mentioned before, and we felt like that engagement was unique. And we really tried to differentiate the difference between our expert speakers and our sponsors to make sure and give that visibility where it was due. And then the sense of urgency was really great as well. We weren't selling something that would just, extend it to perpetuity. It was a very short amount of time. So a sponsor could purchase this opportunity for 4 weeks. And then, about 2 weeks into their sponsorship, we called them and said, how is it going? Would you like to renew this for the next 4 weeks? If not, that's okay, but we're going to open it up to another sponsor. And over half of the sponsors from the previous 4 weeks renewed for the second 4 weeks. So that sense of urgency and immediacy, we feel like really worked in our favor. And my guess is will work in your favor in this virtual space as well. Finally, about developing an attractive product, I would say err on the side of not providing special perks or benefits or expectations. Decide on your benefits, be confident in it, and try to stick to that. It all goes back to that consistency, and make sure every sponsor is getting the same type of benefit. Identifying sponsor prospects. This was very interesting. My guess is that, we at the Chamber tend to go back to the same types of sponsors and supporters every single time, no matter what. We know who kind of our top 20% are. I would say in this case, we were proven that, you can find revenue and opportunity in surprising places. Our most fruitful conversations about this sponsorship were in kind of the mid-level company, kind of a mid to small company that was doing really well right now and also had some really useful products and services that would be of value to members, and they wanted to heighten that product or service with some quick visibility. So look maybe into the second or third layer of your typical investors to find someone who'd be willing to sponsor something like this. And then I would say just adapt and respond as swiftly as you can. Things are moving so fast. We had to upgrade our Zoom capabilities. We had to, brainstorm what would happen if we had technical difficulties. There were lots of things that we had to adjust and adapt to. And I would say do that more quickly than ever as you work in this virtual environment. So before I pivot to some final comments and some questions, wanted to share just briefly what this visually looks like amid some of our digital formats. This is how the Business Support Series shows up on our webpage, our homepage at tulsachamber.com. This here is an example of our Business Support Series landing page and how our sponsors are recognized, as well as how the virtual video and audio components live on for people to hear or access later. And then as your handouts, you have an example of how our sponsorship offering shows up in our sponsorship booklet. That's the document on the left that you'll have as a handout, as well as on the right. This is an example of our e-blast or e-marketing communication for the Business Support Series, and you'll have that as a one-pager to take a look at as well. So very quickly, that is not the only virtual offering that we have at the Tulsa Chamber these days that can be monetized. A few other ideas and examples. We have a very successful Lean In Together Women's Lunch through our Small Business Connection, where women pay $60 to access 3 lunches over the course of 3 months. We found that very successful. Even though we're not offering lunch, people are willing to pay that price in order to create meaningful connections with the same few women over a period of time. So that's something to think about as well. We have a very active diversity initiative at the Chamber called Mosaic, and we have a monthly meeting. That meeting has gone virtually and has been very successful, and so we're actively gaining sponsors to support that monthly meeting, even though attendees it's accessible to attendees for free. Same with our member orientation. It's always been free, but we're allowing visibility and opportunity for up to 4 sponsors, just very similar to our Business Support Series. Ribbon cuttings. I know that is such a contentious issue. We typically don't charge for ribbon cuttings. However, in this innovative and creative environment, especially in the virtual environment, we are tentatively testing a light option for ribbon cutting that would allow non-members to get visibility, as well as members, and only focus on the social media components of our ribbon cutting. So we're dabbling in that right now, and we truly believe that will be a moneymaker for the chamber, as well as to give companies that might not consider engaging with us with a full membership some access. It will also help cover the cost of mileage, for someone to drive out and take a picture of the business, things we've never considered before that we're very excited about. This virtual tip jar idea, it is not mine, but I wanted to share it because it's just so cool. If you have a restaurant or a bar, or some sort of culinary expert or retailer that you want to focus or feature at one of your networking events, for example, have them do a demo in a virtual format and allow attendees to tip the expert or the person doing the presentation with a virtual tip jar. You can set up a GoFundMe account, or perhaps you already have a mechanism to donate at your chamber, but you would be surprised at how many people would be willing to give a tip, not only to your expert, but also to contribute in support of your chamber. Chambers across the country, I heard this idea first from a chamber in Florida, has raised $200 to $300 every time they have put a virtual tip jar out there at one of their networking events, which is truly fascinating. And the final thing I would say is, here at the Tulsa Chamber, we have created a Support Our Mission page. It's an opportunity for members to contribute above and beyond their membership dues to our 501c3, just as a charitable donation. It's amazing what you will get if you just ask. And so I would say that as of today, we've received more than $23,000 to this website just by asking our members to consider a charitable gift that equals 25% or more of their current membership dues. Some members have contributed just a few dollars, and some members doing well have contributed very generously. And so I would say, sometimes chambers feel like they have to do something in order to earn an investment from a member in the term of a monetary sponsorship or something of that nature. That's not always the case. Your mission is so important, and members will be willing to support the good work you're doing if you just ask. So the final thing I will say is that I know there's a lot of anxiety and potential angst around, the new normal and what we should be doing and how we should be charging. Should we be charging at all? All of those questions are valid, and there is not one right answer. The only wrong answer is to do nothing. I truly believe as a fundraiser that the future belongs to those who ask. So my challenge to you all today is just do something. Do something, make a decision, be bold in the ask in support of your mission, and do it long enough to measure whether or not it will be successful, and then pivot and adjust. My hope is that some of this information has been useful to you today, and I'm very inspired by the work that each of you are doing, and I'm very confident that if you ask, you will be surprised by the result. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you, Allison. What awesome information and great work you're doing. Really appreciate it. We do have a lot of questions, and we probably won't get to all of them. I'll just sort of start and go through. Any that we don't get to, we will reach out back to you. So I have questions about the Business Support Series webinar series. One is, do the sponsors have input into the topic of each event?
That's a really great question. Absolutely not. So what we found is there was a very specific differentiation between those who wanted to propose or gain visibility for their product and those who had true expertise that might not be accessible to members that might not be able to afford it. So for example, we wanted a speaker to focus on maybe legal or financial or health expertise. We wanted our sponsors to focus on providing visibility for their business or their product. So we wanted to make sure that we kept the content and the integrity of the content totally separate from what the sponsors' aim or desire was.
Okay, thank you. I believe there's a question on what system you're using. I believe you said Zoom, is that right, for webinars?
That's right. Yes, we started with, more of a basic package and found out pretty quickly that based on capacity and just functionality, we needed to upgrade. So I'm not sure what level of Zoom, kind of a Zoom account we have, but that is our mechanism.
Okay. And they also ask with respect to ACCE, and we use GoToWebinar, which is what we're using for this particular webinar, as well as Zoom for roundtables and some webinars. So it really is just a preference of the staff member and the number of folks we're going to have on the webinar. And speaking of which, another question is, with webinars twice a week, how many attendees do you have at the webinars?
That's a great question. So, when we first started this webinar series, we had over 300 every single offering. But, there was a lot of uncertainty. Not every chamber or organization was producing a webinar, and the topics were, very relevant, related to health and, SBA loans and those types of things. Very quickly, soon after, we leveled out at about 150 attendees per offering, and it's gone a little bit south since then. My guess is there's a lot of competition in the marketplace now, and so we are actually looking toward a once a week offering starting in early June.
Okay. A couple questions on charging attendees. Do you charge the attendees to attend, or is it free because of the sponsorship?
Yeah, great question. So we decided very early on that we wanted to be as useful to our community and to members and non-members alike as possible in order to get them the resources they needed. So we do not charge members. We allow the sponsorships to provide the revenue for the organization. Now, there are other virtual offerings that we do charge for, like our Lean In Together lunch. So it truly depends on what access and information that you're providing. I would encourage you to not limit. If the information that you're sharing on a webinar or a virtual offering is really, really important for businesses to succeed and grow, I would consider making that a free offering. If it's access to individuals or access to build relationships with each other, that could be something that might be worth monetizing, that might make a little bit more sense.
Okay. A question about targets for sponsorships. Understanding second and third layers of membership are targets, is there a concern about negative effect from current sponsors committed without paying and choosing the lower level new sponsorships?
I think I heard two questions there, so I'll try to attack both. Typically, in a regular environment, our chamber is very lenient with sponsors in the timing of their payments. We know our sponsors enjoy their visibility that they get with us, and we never worry that they're going to not pay their commitments. However, in this virtual space, we have been very upfront that we are not able to provide visibility to anyone without prepayment. So we ask for payment by credit card, pretty much only, in order to turn on those virtual sponsorships as soon as possible. The second thing I heard was maybe concern about existing sponsors versus new sponsors. And so I would say, as you spin up these virtual offerings, there's nothing that says you can't recognize, benefactor sponsors or overall title sponsors to your chamber. But I would question why that might be necessary unless you've already promised visibility on everything you're going to do to some of these sponsors. And if that's the case, I would say go ahead and find a way to recognize them additionally, but make sure you carve out some really great value and build that really great case for sponsorship for anything new that you're going to sell.
Okay. A question about content development. You mentioned a programming team to develop content. Can you expand on what that looks like? Is it primarily staff or volunteer driven?
That's a really great question. So we believed that the people that had the best finger on the pulse and who wouldn't have as much bias would be members of the staff internally at our Tulsa chamber that had key expertise or was brought to the table because of the diversity of their networks. So we took the opportunity to bring a few individuals together from across our organization, one or two people from our economic development team, one or two people from our Mosaic or our Tulsa's Young Professionals team, and a few members members of our membership and events team. And we, because we call our members constantly and we're very engaged with what their needs are, we were able to put together a very robust and diverse slate of programming offerings that have been very well received. So while we certainly gained and encouraged member feedback in what the topics could be, we didn't include volunteers in the process because we needed to move as quickly as possible and not be bogged down by politics. So that was the decision that we made. My guess is that there are other ways to do it. That was the most efficient and direct way for us to get our programming out the door.
Okay, I think it's 2:30, but we'll take one final question. How are you handling event sponsorships that have already been sold and paid for, but now you can't hold the event, such as a sponsor for a business after hours or something like that?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I would say we are still actively working through that. I would say, as a general rule, never expect that someone who paid for something in advance is still not willing to allow you to fulfill it, but perhaps in a different way. Our general rule is that, I'll give you an example. We have a congressional forum coming up tomorrow with one of our senators. And we've had, many of our members prepay for visibility at that congressional forum. Well, some of them are sizable sponsors and are benefactors of our entire legislative series. And some of them just wanted to buy a table at that specific event in order to network with people who are going to be in the room. Well, those are very different expectations that those sponsors have. So we've picked up the phone and called those sponsors to gain some insight on why they wanted to sponsor that event in the first place. And if there are innovative and creative solutions that we can execute around our Zoom event in order to get them the value that they desired. And overwhelmingly, I would say we've only had one sponsor say, I'm just not convinced that I'm going to be able to get what I intended. I'd like to roll this sponsorship to something else. And we've been willing to do that. But overall, sponsors have been so generous and so supportive of how innovative we're attempting to be, and they've been working hand in hand with us to assure they get the value that they expected.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Allison. Really appreciate it. Folks, there's a lot of other questions here. We'll get back to you. And figure out the best way to get your questions answered. One thing you can do is contact Allison directly, and her contact information is on that. There it is, right there, on that last slide. You can download the presentation slides and handouts now, but if you haven't had a chance to do that, I will post them, and I will post the recording, the slides, handouts, all of that good stuff, no later than Thursday on our ACCE webinar page. So our next webinar is this Thursday, May 14th, at 2 p.m. East Coast time, and it's going to cover ways to take care of yourself and your team during the crisis, presented by our own Anissa Stevens, who is also president and founder of Bridge Partners. So that is going to be a good one. I hope you can join us then. So thank you again, Allison, for taking the time to present today's webinar and such great information. Thank you to all of you for everything you're doing now in your communities, and for taking the time to join us to learn more. I hope everyone has a great afternoon, and we will see you on the next ACC webinar. Bye-bye.